Well, I just get in my car, I drive to the store, I walk in, and I can just about count on that they've got all the water that I'm going to need. Some of you are probably getting more technical than that and thinking about the fact that I have a main line that runs right in front of in my front yard, and it supplies water to me in my house. Thinking I have all the water that I need. For those of you that don't know, my fiance and I, Lydia, have recently bought a house, and we've been remodeling that house for going on a year now, and thankfully I can finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's been a long time coming, but to have been built in the late 1930s, the early 1940s. So this house is older than anybody sitting in this room right now, I guarantee it. In the early 1940s, they didn't have the luxury of being able to get in their cars and go to town and get the water. They didn't have the luxury of running water in their house. What they did have, though, was a well in their backyard. And anytime that they needed water, they would have to go out back, dip up water from the well, go back inside, and depending on if they wanted it hot or cold, they would have to sit there and wait for it to heat up on the stove. This house that we bought still has the original well in the backyard. The other day I was out there looking down in it, I pushed the cover back, and I was looking down in it, and interestingly enough, there's still water at the bottom of the well. It's dirty water, but there's still water down there. As I looked at the well, all I could imagine was Lydia's great-grandparents going out there and dipping water up out of the well each and every time that they needed to. And I was thinking to myself, man, I'm glad we don't have to do this anymore. Because all I could think about was getting up on a 30-degree morning and having to go out there and dip water out of the well. So I'm glad that we don't have to do that anymore. In this day and time, we are blessed. We have the luxury of being able to get in our car and drive to town and get water. We're blessed because we can walk to the kitchen and open up a valve, and we've got all the water that we could possibly need, or so we think. If you have your Bibles, I want to encourage you to open them up with me to John chapter 4. John chapter 4. While you're turning over there, as Austin read for us earlier, Jesus has just left Judea. He's on his way to Galilee. But on his way to Galilee, he has to pass through Samaria, specifically the town of Sychar. And in the town of Sychar, at the center of the city, there's a well. And this is the community well where people from all over Samaria or all over the town of Sychar would come and dip the water up that they needed each and every day. And Jesus has come in from a long journey, and as you can imagine, he's been walking all day, so he's ready to take a load off. And so he sits down at this well to take a break. Begin reading with me in verse 7. It says, "There came a woman of Samaria to draw water. Jesus said to her, 'Give me a drink.' For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. Therefore the Samaritan woman said to him, 'How is it that you, being a Jew, ask me for a drink, since I'm a Samaritan woman?' For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans." But Jesus answered and said to her, "If you knew the gift of God, and who it is who says to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given it to you, living water." So Jesus has come into this town of Sychar, and he sat down at this well. And while he's sitting there, this Samaritan woman approaches the well, as I'm sure that she did every day, because she would need water. And so she's approached the well, and Jesus has taken notice of her. Jesus looks at this woman and says, "Give me a drink." Now keep in mind that this woman has no idea who this man is that has just asked her to give him a drink. But I want you to notice what happens. Instead of immediately giving him a drink, she looks at him and she says, "Sir, I'm a Samaritan and you're a Jew. Why on earth are you even talking to me?" How could she possibly know that this man is a Jew? She's never met him before. You know, I love Jesus. And I know you're probably thinking, "Caleb, that's great since you're going to school to be a preacher." But I love how Jesus, in situations like this, I love how smooth and subtle he is. He's basically told this woman who he is, and she's completely missed it. But Jesus had a plan. Let's continue reading. In verse 11, it says, she said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where then do you get that living water? You are not greater than our father Jacob, are you, who gave us this well and drank of it himself and his sons and his cattle?" So once again, Jesus has very subtly told who he is, but the woman has missed it. She said, "Sir, you don't have anything to dip with." In my mind, when I read this, I'm thinking, woman, take a hint. But then also, I'm thinking, if you come to this well to get water every morning, don't you have a dipper that you could dip him some water out with? But let's continue in verse 13. Verse 13. It says, Jesus answered and said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water, the water in the well, will thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water that I will give him shall never thirst. But the water that I will give him will become in him a well of water, springing up to eternal life." So after the whole dipper scene, again told her who he is very subtly. He doesn't necessarily give it away, but he kind of tells her who he is. But once again, she has missed it. But look at verse 15. It says, the woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water, so that I will not be thirsty, nor come all the way here to draw." So the woman reacts just how we would expect her to. She's tired of having to come to this well each and every day and dip up the water that she needs. But if I put myself in this situation, I'm either going to be excited like that woman was, or I'm going to be a little skeptical because remember, she doesn't know who this man is. And he has just told her that he has some water that will allow her to thirst no more. And for all that she knows, that water could put her in the grave. So she's putting a lot of trust in someone that she doesn't know. You know, that's another thing that I love about the character of Jesus. He makes himself so approachable and so trusting. A man that this woman has no idea who she is or who he is has got her begging for more. Continuing in verse 16, it says, he said to her, "Go call your husband and come here." The woman answered and said, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You have correctly said, I have no husband. And the woman said to him, "Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and you people say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, an hour is coming when neither in this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But an hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for For such people the Father seeks to be his worshipers. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. So after the woman replied, and of course Jesus knew this going into this, but the woman replied, "Sir, I have no husband." Once again, Jesus is so slick. Jesus has just told this woman something about her that she has not told him yet, but he knew that beforehand. All while she still does not realize this is Jesus, but in the next verse we see that she does perceive that he is some sort of prophet. And when the woman says this, Jesus begins speaking as a prophet would have spoken and ends up converting her ultimately. He has her literally begging at his feet for Jesus. And this was his plan the entire time. He knew the woman was living in sin. And by the end of their conversation, he had her ready to change her way. Continuing in verse 25, it says, the woman said to him, "I know that Messiah is coming. When that one comes, he will declare all things to us." In verse 26, Jesus said to her, "I who speak to you am he." The woman claims her belief in the Messiah. She proclaims that she knows that he's coming. And she knows that when he gets here, that he's going to reveal everything or declare all things to them. And as soon as Jesus heard this, he told her who he was. Because he knew that he had converted her. And he revealed himself to her. You know, this whole time in this whole story, she had to be thinking, man, this guy's really good. He's really convincing. I guess now she knows why. Imagine how this woman must have felt when she realized that she had been talking to Jesus the entire time. Imagine how that must have felt, knowing that she had literally just talked to Jesus. You know what? We can experience this same thing that this woman experienced. All we have to do is drink from the water of life. You know, at the beginning of the lesson, I mentioned that it must have been tiring going back and forth to the well each and every day, and it was for this woman. She said it herself, but I bet she's glad she went this time because it changed her life forever. You know, we often sing a song, "There's a fountain free." And that's true, there's a fountain free. 'Tis for you and me. And it's open for all. You know, you're probably wondering why I would be speaking on something like this to a group full of preachers. Because aren't we supposed to be Jesus in this situation? Aren't we supposed to be the ones who go out and bring the sinners to the fold? Yeah, we are. But in order for us to lead the sinners to the water, we've got to be drinking from the water ourselves. We can go to the store and we can buy all the water that we want. But that water is only going to cause us to get thirsty again and again and again. The fountain is there. It's open for all. The question is, are you drinking from it? Where do you get